The first thing Claire noticed was how the air changed the deeper they went into the hospital. It had been stale and dusty in the lobby, the kind of smell you'd expect from 30 years of abandonment. But now it carried something else. Something wet. The others was still snapping photos in the main hallway. Rusted wheelchairs, graffiti-smeared walls, the collapsed ceiling where a tree had pushed its way inside. Their voices echoed off the tiled corridor, bright and careless. They weren't here for the same reason she was. Claire didn't care about Instagram pictures or urban exploration hashtags. She'd come because she had read about St. Dominic's Hospital, about Room 9. The articles were vague, local news pieces from the late 70s, mentions of isolated incidents before the hospital's sudden closure. Nobody seemed to know exactly why it had shut down, only that an entire wing had been sealed off in a single night, and the patients inside had never been transferred to other facilities. They had just vanished. Her flashlight cut across the walls as she walked alone toward the west wing. The floor tiles here had warped, bulging up where the concrete beneath had cracked. Every few steps, she passed faded signs, X-ray, records, isolation. The deeper she went, the more the sound from her friends faded. The building groaned around her, old pipes knocking, beams settling. But beneath that was a more unsettling sound. A low, irregular thump. Not constant enough to be a machine. Not loud enough to be footsteps. She stopped, holding her breath. It stopped too. The hallway turned sharply to the left, ending in a single, heavy door. The paint was blistered and flaking, revealing patches of dull steel beneath. Above it hung a warped plastic sign with faded red letters. Room 9. Isolation. The hinges were thick, industrial, more like a vault than a patient's room. A row of gouges scarred the paint near the bottom, as though something had scraped desperately at it from the inside. Claire felt her pulse tick faster. This was it. She tried the door. It didn't budge at first, the rusted hinges groaning in protest. Then it gave suddenly, swinging inward, with a metallic shriek that echoed down the hallway. The air inside was different, colder, still. She stepped in. The smell hit her immediately. Mildew, dust, and something faintly sweet, like rotting fruit. The room was small and square, its single boarded window letting in only a thin slice of light through the cracks. Her flashlight beam jittered across the floor. The bed sat in the far corner, bolted to the ground. No sheets, no blankets, just a thin, stained mattress whose edges curled upward like dead leaves. Beside it stood an IV pole, its hook empty but swaying ever so slightly, as though someone had brushed past it seconds ago. Claire took one step further inside. The door behind her slammed shut. The bang was so loud it punched through her chest, leaving her ears ringing. She spun around, flashlight beam shaking wildly. The door had no handle on the inside, just a smooth, cold metal plate. Her mouth went dry. What the hell? Click. She froze. The sound came from the far corner, low to the ground, metal shifting against metal. Her light swept the room. The walls were peeling in long strips, the paint curled downward like molting skin. Dark streaks marred the plaster at uneven intervals, some high, some near the floor. She stepped closer and saw the streaks weren't paint at all, but something dried, flaking, and brown-black. Her skin prickled. Another click, closer this time. She turned the beam toward the bed. The shadow beneath it was a perfect rectangle of blackness. And then she heard it. Breathing. Slow, wet, and ragged. It wasn't the sound of someone sleeping. It was the sound of someone listening. Claire took one step backward, her heels scuffing against the floor. The breathing hitched, like whoever, or whatever was under there, had just realized she was moving away. She opened her mouth to yell for the others, but something deep inside her told her not to. The sound here didn't travel the way it should. It felt as though the air in this room swallowed anything louder than a whisper. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Then, soft, almost playful, came the chuckle. It wasn't loud, it wasn't fast, it was just enough to tell her, "You're not alone in here." Claire's flashlight trembled in her hand, the beam jittering across the floor. The breathing under the bed didn't stop. It was slow, wet, methodical. Each inhale pulling at the air in the room, each exhale pushing out something colder than before. Her throat felt tight. She took another step back until her shoulders touched the sealed metal door. The steel was cold enough to bite through her jacket. "Don't move," something inside her warned. "It's listening." The IV pole gave a faint metallic sway, the chain at the top clinking gently as if disturbed by a breeze. But there was no air moving in here. The boards over the window sealed the place like a tomb. Claire lowered the flashlight beam toward the gap under the bed. The shadow there was too black, absorbing the light instead of breaking it. She expected to see dust bunnies, discarded trash, maybe an old blanket, but the beam simply stopped at the darkness, as though it had depth, as though it went farther than the dimensions of the bed allowed. Another click echoed from inside that shadow. The sound was sharp, metallic, and close, like a lock turning. Her skin went cold. She glanced at the walls, looking for anything she could use to pry the door open. A piece of broken pipe, maybe a chunk of metal from the window boards. That's when she noticed the streaks again, not just on the walls, on the ceiling. Long, dragging marks, as if someone or something had been pulled upward against gravity, scraping along the plaster as they went. The light flickered above her. It wasn't on a second ago. She hadn't touched a switch. Neither had the thing under the bed. The bulb swung slightly in its socket, casting slow arcs of shadow around the room. The bed frame groaned. Claire's pulse spiked. The breathing had stopped. Silence pressed in like a weight. She was about to take a cautious step toward the window when the mattress let out a sound, a long, low inhale. The fabric actually rose and fell, as though the bed itself had lungs. Claire's stomach twisted. Her flashlight beam quivered over the stained mattress. The bulge under it shifted slightly, then settled. The IV pole swayed again. This time, she noticed the sound that accompanied it. Faint rhythmic taps against the floor. Too precise to be random. Tap, 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 tap. A pattern. She didn't want to admit it, but she recognized the rhythm. It was the same cadence as someone knocking, from the inside of a coffin. Her hands shook harder, the light dancing over the floor. The air grew heavier, and she caught a new smell. Coppery, sharp, cutting through the mildew. Blood. Her mouth was dry, but she swallowed anyway, the sound loud in her ears. Then came the whisper. It slid out from under the bed, riding the stale air, brushing her skin like cold fingers. So faint she almost thought she imagined it. "Lie down." Her chest tightened. The mattress shifted again, the bulge larger this time, like whatever was inside it was turning over to face her. She wanted to scream for her friends, but the thought hit her again. The room swallowed sound. Even if they were 10 feet away, they'd hear nothing. The bulb above flared brightly, then dimmed, then flared again, and each flash seemed to rearrange the shadows in the room. The stains on the walls grew darker, the ceiling marks spread, spiderwebbing toward her. Claire took one step toward the boarded window. She could rip the wood down, maybe squeeze through. A sudden thump rattled the bed frame. Her light jerked toward it just in time to see the mattress ripple from one end to the other, like something crawling beneath the surface. The IV pole spun half a rotation and stopped dead, its hook now angled toward her like a crooked finger. The smell of rot swelled until it was all she could taste. Then, with no warning, the boards over the window shuddered. Once, twice, then they went still. From under the bed came another whisper, closer now, almost giddy. Closer. The dark felt thick, as if it had weight. Claire's flashlight refused to turn back on, no matter how hard she thumbed the switch. She could feel the faint vibration of movement through the floor, like something pacing in the level beneath her. Except there wasn't a level beneath her. Room 9 sat on the ground floor. The mattress rustled. Not just the sound of something inside it. Now it sounded like the entire bed was settling. Wood and metal groaning, screws tightening into the floor. A slow creak, then another. It was moving toward her. Her back pressed harder against the cold door. Her mind screamed to stay put, but her body broke first. She darted left, skirting the edge of the room, one hand trailing along the peeling wall to orient herself. In the darkness, the bed slid across the floor with a scraping noise that raised the hairs on her neck. It wasn't being pushed. It was gliding, deliberate, patient, following her movements. She stumbled into the far corner, boots skidding on the dust-slick floor. Her knee banged against metal. It wasn't the IV pole. This was lower, square-shaped, a hatch. It was built into the floor beneath the bed. Or rather, now that the bed had shifted away from its original spot, directly where the bed had been bolted down. Her fingers found the latch, rusted, rough, ice cold. From behind her, the wet whisper floated across the darkness. Go on. She yanked. It resisted at first, then gave way with a metallic shriek, revealing a square opening. The air that spilled out was damp and sour, like breathing into the mouth of something long dead. She aimed her dead flashlight into the opening anyway, out of reflex. No light returned. It was like staring into an endless throat. Another whisper rose from the hatch. Not one voice, but many, all overlapping. Some were sobbing, some were laughing, some were chanting in a language she didn't recognize. Claire's skin crawled. The bed slid another foot toward her. She could feel the cold radiating from it, as though the torn mattress itself had been soaking in ice water. Her choices shrank to two: stay in the room with it, or go down into whatever waited below. The decision made itself when the mattress bulged once more, this time from both sides, as if multiple bodies were pressing outward. Pale hands clawed through the tears, followed by faces, too many faces, their mouths opening in silent screams. Claire dropped to her knees and swung her legs into the hatch. The metal frame scraped her jeans, leaving smears of rust. The tunnel beneath was narrower than she'd expected, lined with some sort of rough, uneven material that wasn't quite wood or stone. She lowered herself in, feet dangling into nothing, and felt the air change again. Colder, wetter, full of the sound of breathing. She let go. Her boots hit something soft but unsteady, like wet sand. The voices surged around her, their pitch rising until it was almost a wail. She aimed her useless flashlight into the dark, but the tunnel curved sharply downward, vanishing from sight. Somewhere ahead, a faint light flickered, not steady, more like firelight filtered through water. The hatch above her slammed shut. Claire froze. The sound of the bed moving above her was gone now. All she could hear was the slow, wet shuffle of something coming down the tunnel toward her. The air in the tunnel was heavy, thick enough to taste. Every breath felt damp, like inhaling through a cloth soaked in stagnant water. The flicker ahead pulsed faintly, just enough to keep her moving toward it, though every instinct screamed to turn back. But turning back wasn't an option. She could hear something in the darkness behind her. A slow drag, a pause, another drag, closer. The tunnel walls brushed her shoulders now. They weren't stone, they weren't wood. Her fingers ran over the surface, warm in some places, cold in others, uneven like scar tissue. When she pressed her palm against it, she swore it gave a little, like flesh. The voices that had once been a whisper were louder here. They weren't speaking to her anymore. They were speaking about her. Her name surfaced in the babble, twisted by mouths that didn't seem used to forming human sounds. Clair, stay. She's here. The flicker ahead sharpened, and she realized it wasn't light. It was movement. Something was shifting in the tunnel ahead, swaying back and forth. The glow came from behind it, casting long shadows that stretched toward her like reaching fingers. Her boot sank into something soft. She glanced down and immediately wished she hadn't. A face stared back at her from the floor, half submerged in the wall, lips trembling as it mouthed words she couldn't hear. She lurched forward, but the tunnel seemed to resist her. The walls flexed inward, narrowing, forcing her to crouch, then crawl. The shuffle behind her was faster now. Her hands pressed into the tunnel floor, and she felt them. Other hands, pressing back. Small ones, large ones, fingers curling around hers just long enough to pull before slipping away. She scrambled forward, knees scraping against the uneven ground. Her pulse pounded in her ears so loud it drowned the whispers, until one voice cut through, right at her ear. "You're in my bed." Her blood went cold. Hands shot out from the walls, dozens of them. Some grabbed at her clothes, others locked onto her wrists and ankles. Their grip was impossibly cold, strong enough to bruise. She kicked and twisted, but each time she broke free of one, two more clamped down. She was being pulled backward. Her nails dug into the fleshy wall, tearing at it. Dark fluid oozed out, and the walls groaned like something wounded. The hands tightened, jerking her back in short, sharp tugs. The flicker ahead began to fade. Whatever light had been there was dying. The last thing she saw before it went black was a cluster of faces emerging from the wall ahead, not just watching her, but waiting. Their mouths opened in perfect unison, revealing teeth far too sharp, as the whisper came again, layered with 100 other voices. "Stay." The sound of tearing flesh gave way to silence. Then, nothing at all. Claire's mind floated in the dark, unmoored from her body. She was aware of breathing, but couldn't tell if it was hers. It was slow, steady, the rhythm of something at rest. She tried to move. Her limbs didn't answer. Somewhere far above, she heard faint banging, muffled voices. The sound was strange here, like listening through a wall of water. The voices grew louder, accompanied by the grind of metal and the crack of splintering wood. A beam of light stabbed through the black, but it didn't touch her. It hovered above, unreachable, as though she were staring up from the bottom of a well. Then came a voice she knew. "Clair, are you in here?" Her friends. She tried to call out, but the sound died in her throat. The voices moved closer, their footsteps crunching across the floor of room 9. "Jesus," someone said. "Where is she?" There was a pause. "This is weird. Doors locked from the outside." Metal scraped, hinges screamed, and the door to room 9 banged open. Boots thudded into the room. "What the hell?" one of them muttered. "It's empty." A faint electronic click. Her flashlight beam swept over the floor, its circle of light cutting through the dust. The lens was cracked, the casing smeared with something dark. One of her friends picked it up. "It's still warm." They fanned out, checking corners, the boarded window, the bare mattress. Perfectly still now, the tear sealed as though it had never been touched. "You sure she came this way?" "Positive. I saw her walk down here." The air seemed to thicken. One friend shivered. "Did you guys hear that?" They fell silent. In the stillness, so faint it might have been imagination, came the sound of breathing. Slow, wet, coming from the bed. The flashlight beam swung toward it, holding steady. The mattress rose just slightly, as though someone had shifted beneath the sheets. The breathing stopped. Then, right against the ear of the friend holding the flashlight, a voice whispered, "You're in my bed."